Hello, everyone, and welcome to another LoLa Podcast. Today, I am joined by Paul Cheung. He's the founder of Fight Gravity, which is an advertising and production company that he started back in 2011. So he's got loads of experience under his belt. Paul's story is a real one. He went from journalism into building a production business the hard way, learning how to turn creative work into something commercially sustainable. And that is the most difficult task. Because you do something you like and then you need to turn it into something that is actually a business. So he had to navigate the reality of a feast and famine industry, which we all know the creative industry is. And you have to stay lean, you have to stay sharp, and you need to be ready to mobilize a full crew in 24 hours when the right job lands. So what I like about Paul is how he clearly understands what drives the work, the relationships, the trust, and the director at the center of the whole machine. So we get into how production companies really win the big ads, why office culture still matters for the team, and what's changed and what hasn't changed in terms of tech, tape cameras to today's good enough standard. So we're going to get right into it. But Paul, welcome to the call. Welcome to this podcast. Please give us a bit of a background about how you got into this in the first place.
Hey, Roger. Thanks for having me. Good to be on. Background is, as you said, I came from journalism. Journalists archetypally don't earn much money. And I was constantly in my overdraft and it was a struggle. I mean, it was fun. I had a fun job. I traveled a lot. But the truth is I had no money in my bank account. And I was in my late 20s at that point. And the ceiling for where I could go was pretty low. So I thought about the things that I really want to do. And it was helped by the fact that the magazine that I was working on was closing anyway. And sometimes you need that sort of push, an external push, because I could have been thinking for years about doing this, but without that actually happening, that the serendipitous nature of that actually happening, maybe I would never have done that. And obviously I like to think that I would have had the drive to do it, but the truth is that necessity is, as you know, like the mother of all invention, and sometimes that's the thing that you need. And once I was made redundant, I had a bit of money in my pocket because I'd been working at the magazine for a while, and I bought my first camera. And I mean, I wouldn't say it was straightforward from that point, but from that point onwards, that's when my journey started, and it didn't really go any other way apart from I knew I wanted to start a production company. I knew I wanted to direct, and I knew that I wanted to use production company as a vehicle for my directing. But in terms of business savviness, in terms of understanding anything commercial, I think that one thing that really speaks to the fact that I honestly had no idea what was going on is that my email address is a .co.uk address. And I don't know what I was thinking at that point, but clearly I was thinking, well, I want to show that, I'm from the UK, because sometimes I think that's important. But for some reason, I didn't have the foresight to think we're going to do jobs all over the world, which is what has ended up happening, which is why every subsequent email after mine is a .com. And to me, that's just so normal and obvious now. And sometimes people, they don't send me emails correctly because they assume, rightly, that mine is .com as well, but mine's the only one that's .co.uk. So that was the first, let's say, error. And obviously I can't really change that now because everyone has my email. But I think just something as small as that can sometimes, it's not that it's been disastrous, but I could clearly have made a better decision at that very, very first moment.
It does look sometimes that the hindsight does bring some decisions into clear view. And when you're doing it at the time, you have your reasons, you have a decision-making process, but it's only based on the facts that you already know. And then 2 months later, 1 year later, 10 years later, you look back and you're like, I had no idea what I was doing back then, did I?
Yeah. Totally.
Every single entrepreneur has to start somewhere. And at the end of the day, as an entrepreneur, as a business person, as someone that's driving their own work, you need to do discovery, and that discovery comes naturally, and that's how you grow. You need to make mistakes, and I'll be honest, with LoLa and with Theo Technologies, we've gone wrong so many times, and I like to joke about it sometimes when I'm speaking to people and say every wrong decision we could have made we have made. And that's what made us to what we are today. But sometimes you can't help but wonder, what if we didn't make those mistakes? What if we actually were aware and knowledgeable from the beginning? Would we be in the same situation, or would we be 10x, 100x? Who knows? We might have gone out of business because we moved too fast. It's we all know what we know. So in terms of how you got into the business, you had the journalistic background, so you already had I guess a very clear view of how to structure the storylines. And then from there, you got your first camera and you started doing some production work. What was the first few projects you've done? What kind of projects did you pick up?
Well, I was fortunate in as much as I had a very close friend, and she wanted to, this is so random, but she wanted to make a TV show about cosmetic surgery. And she managed to get funding from one of those, not like a cable TV channel, but something very, very niche channel, like the wedding channel. And she said, look, I've got these episodes we need to make. I've got contacts with cosmetic surgeons, dentists. Do you want to shoot it? And for me, that meant 6 months of regular work. And even though maybe it wasn't my favorite subject matter, because to be honest, filming surgery for 8 hours is not a joke. I remember, and it gives me so much respect for surgeons, because they don't actually take a break. They don't take a break to eat, to drink, or to do anything. They just power through. And I remember at the end of one 8-hour surgery session, I hadn't had anything to eat or drink, and I felt really nauseous. And after the surgery, I actually threw up because obviously my blood sugar was low. So I remember that very distinctly. But the crazy thing about cosmetic surgery is, and this is not to put anyone off, but some of the procedures are extremely violent, as in the things that they have to do to your body, like to put things in or to move things, is kind of startling. But it was an interesting experience. So I had that, and then from the magazines that I'd been writing for, I also had a very good sports contacts. That's where, towards the end of my journalism career, I was writing for health and fitness magazines.
Okay.
And so I had some contacts in that area already. And the key thing that I was doing then, because it was just me, sort of one-man band style, was that I was approaching brands just on my own. And that is completely different business model to how I do it now. To how we do it now, because we're a company, we're different entity. But when you're a one-man band, I think that you can approach brands in a much easier fashion, in as much as the risk for them is way smaller, because what you're saying is, for 500 quid or whatever I was charging, you're saying you can do the edit, you can shoot, they just have you to deal with. There's no other layers, and it's just a useful, you're a useful tool for them, and there's just not much for them to risk in terms of economically. And so that's how I made my start, and that's how I was building my portfolio.
Okay, well, so what you mean when you were going as a person, and the brand was you, and you were the team, and you were the person that was dealing with everything? It was just the simplicity of the process that was attractive to some of these brands, that they were able to speak to Paul, and whenever something needed changing, they call up Paul, and whenever they need payment to make payment, then they speak to Paul. It just makes it simple for them. But in terms of risk, surely when it comes to the types of projects you can get as an individual versus as a company, surely there's a difference between those, because some companies will only work with other companies because they know that there's a team behind the company, or they expect that to be the case anyway. Did you find that to be the case?
Yeah, I mean, that's totally the case. In our industry, in the advertising industry, brands, the bigger the brand is, usually they work with big advertising agencies. They want the security of an advertising agency between the production company and them. It's just the way things have always been done. Mad Men is a kind of, as dramatized as it is, that sort of creative first, and that comes from the advertising agency, is the way things are expected. Some things are changing at the moment. I know that some production companies are going more directly to brand. That's what I hear a lot of. But in terms of our business model, we still 99% work with advertising agencies. But back then, if you're working with an up and coming brand, or a brand which, they don't even know about that advertising agency landscape, then they don't know anything else. So they're happy to work with you, and they just want someone to solve the problem of, we need these videos for marketing. Can you do it? Also, back then, that you're talking about almost 15 years ago, that landscape of content was different. But now it's so saturated. Everyone is expected to be able to edit, to shoot, content creators. Like that, obviously that content creation is its own employment now. That's its own job. Back then, not such a big thing. So the ability to do all those things, to edit, to shoot, to direct, was somewhat of a novelty, because, and I guess this will get into this in the technology side, cameras were getting much smaller. Like really, they were getting a lot smaller year on year. So that enabled us to be able to shoot on our own. And that was just not something that was possible, 20, 25 years ago.
Yeah, and that's quite interesting actually as well, in terms of the last decade. It really created the industry of content creators and influencers, and through social media, and I guess it's the technology as well. When you're able to shoot at high definition just with a simple device that everyone seems to have today, then at that point, what's really stopping you from producing? It's down to the individual, and if the individual decides, I'm going to produce some content, whether it's good or bad, they're able to create it, post it, and push it out there. I mean, the LoLa Podcast it's a great example of that. We're using it as an awareness piece. We're using it to reach out to the creative community and understand how businesses work within this industry. But at the same time, I'm just a guy with a webcam, a nice background that I've just painted myself and created a bit of a studio feel, and then I'm recording on a Google Meet. So the accessibility to content creation is become it's so easy now that everyone can do it. And I guess in your industry, I'd say it starts ruining the quality of the average quality of the content that goes out, and creates an oversaturation to the point where you need to find a way to shine through, because you're the experts. You have the ability to produce things that people like me can't at this moment in time. And that is the difficulty when it comes to navigating the market. So in terms of the technology that you guys use, obviously back then you said you bought your first camera. How did it develop from that first camera to the jobs that you were doing, and where did you see the big changes over time?
So I think that a lot of people will relate to the fact that, especially if they're camera operators or DOPs, they're going to relate to the idea of being a gear hand, being someone who's just obsessed with gear. And you probably have the same thing on your side as well. People who are into computers or cameras or any of this sort of tech, we're constantly looking for ways to upgrade or, find that little bit extra, whatever it is, megapixels, whatever it is at that point, memory. And at that time, it was still DV cam, and I'm showing my age here, but it was DV cam, and that meant literally when you bring the footage onto your computer, I remember I'd have to sit there in real time as the tape deck plays, and then you get your footage, and it was totally normal, obviously. And then I experienced, it's quite a dramatic shift, really. I mean, I went from buying these DV cam tapes, and you're trying to get the most, let's say, high fidelity ones, in the same way as hi-fi aficionados. That's you're looking for like the best mediums to record on, and we switched to memory cards. And I remember during that transition, I was worried, because for 2 years or whatever it was, I'd recorded on these tapes, these physical tapes, and the security of, you know, holding a tape in your hand and knowing that the footage is on here versus a memory card recording onto it and hoping that it's on there. I remember it's not that it took me, it's not like it took me years to make that transition, but to get comfortable with it, I think it took me a few jobs. It took me a few jobs to, you know, you drag and drop. But obviously that was a huge thing, a huge time saver. The fact that I don't have to sit there with my tape deck anymore. And I remember thinking, you know, you hang on to your tapes, you hang on to the tape deck because you think maybe there's still a chance that these things need to be used. But then once that transition happened, you never looked back. The industry never looked back. And, you know, that continues to be the way we move stuff around now, except that you can just move vast quantities of terabytes so much quicker. You know, before you're waiting for hours, and it's a big bottleneck in your workflow. And now,
yeah,
you know, it's pretty quick. You can do it in a matter of minutes on set, generally.
I've never thought about the analog to digital transition in the way that you just described it there, because practically I know the films and how they work, and then when you change it to a digital medium, you need to essentially re-record it into a digital transition, and then once that happens, you've got it digitally to play with and put in your software and start playing with it. But then the fact that you considered the cassette, the film roll, essentially, as that's the actual video, and when you make it digital is not the actual video because it's digital, it's information that floats in the air. You can't really physically see it unless you plug it in and start deciphering it through some kind of device. I've never actually considered the fact that that is the actual video that you could, in effect, pick it up and, oh, it's a bit scratched. That's actually a scratch video. And then you get a digital card and it's an encased plastic and metal something that magically has the video on it. You don't make that connection. But like you said, once you're forced into it on a technology that's clearly so much better, and then the industry doesn't look back, you just get swooped with it. And sometimes that's a good thing because you might not be the expert in digital technology, you're the expert in the videography and production of videos. So the expert that's actually giving you the digital tool did a good choice, made a good choice for you. But at the same time, could that be used vice versa? So could you be pushed into a technology that's actually reducing the quality of your work? Have you seen any of those by any chance?
Do you mean technology as a whole, or do you mean specific to cameras?
Well, I'm trying to think of an example because it might be such an easy thing. Like even if you just think about the AI videos that have been produced now. I was watching the Coca-Cola advert last night on TV, and I was thinking every single clip within that Coca-Cola advert for Christmas this year is an AI generated video, which is interesting to say that a company like Coca-Cola has made that choice to normalize the AI generation of video and push it out. But at the same time, it does make a lot of people lazy. The fact that it's such a powerful generative tool, it means that you can fire out loads of video without doing a lot of work. But because you're doing that, you're not going through the process of figuring out all the small niggles and improving the quality of it. So even though it's a very powerful tool and it's being given to people, if it's used badly, then the result will be bad. So that's an example of a technology that is clearly better and is being pushed on people because it's so easy to access, but it's not necessarily a better result compared to if you do it properly.
Totally. No, it's a good point. I think over the years, there's been a few technological touch points which are very arguable as to whether they improve the quality. So 3D films and 3D glasses. And then there was a movement of 360 video. I don't know if you ever experienced that, where everyone was trying. Sorry?
I haven't actually. So what's a 360 video?
Where there was these videos coming out where people have used a 360 view camera to shoot someone climbing up a cliff face. I mean, it's cool. It's cool for about 2 seconds to me, because when you watch it as a viewer, what you do is you use the mouse to scroll and you can see what the climber would have seen. but it's not actually. So it's somewhat active watching and a bit passive watching as well, because obviously you're still stuck on whatever
The film
shoot
show.
they've done. Yeah, and that died a death because people don't want to necessarily make it dramatic. They can't necessarily make a dramatic decision or dramaturgical decision based on where they're scrolling. It's not like a video game. The beauty about films, and I think this continues to be the case, and I think it's great that it continues to be the case, is that, to be honest, the things that have the most emotional draw, the things that affect us the most, continue to be just 2D films where it's just really well directed, really well acted, and there isn't any of this other window dressing. I'll give you some other examples of cinema experiences that I don't know if you've been unlucky or lucky enough to be part of, but you've got 4D cinema. Have you ever seen that?
Yes. Is it the one with the actual chair moving and giving you sprays and just getting you involved into what's happening in the video? Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. I watched The Creator. It was the only screening that I could see because of the timing. And I watched The Creator in one of those, and I was like, this is not only is this pointless, but this is kind of taking away from my experience.
Yeah.
And then you have, what was that? Where the screen takes up the periphery as well. It's on the sides of the cinema. And they've added these little wrinkles to try and make the viewing experience more interesting. But again, it's not that interesting for people. I mean, it's a novelty, but just people still respond most to the 2D film, where you just sit there and it's an experience for you that you just go through. You're not having to make any decisions about what path your hero takes. For me, that's a video game realm, and that's great. And video games, are fantastic. But I think this merging of the two, they've tried to merge those two worlds before. I don't know. That has limited enjoyment for me.
Yeah, and I guess there's like 3 distinct entertainment subjects that you've discussed there that fall into each other if you allow them to start merging. So you've got the plain old videography, you have the screen up the video, and it's the standard 16:9 ratio, and you just follow it, and that's the viewing experience. And then you've got the other side of the spectrum in terms of interactivity, which is the gaming one, where you've got intense graphics, but you need to progress the storyline somehow, and that's a lot more engaged. And when you said that they tried to merge the two, which is you've got a video that you can't interact with as such, but at the same time it's making you do work to better be able to view what's around the climate. And then you start thinking about the VR experience, the immersive ones, which are not quite gaming sometimes, they're more interactive. But at the same time, they allow that 360 video to be perceived a lot easier than scrolling with your mouse. Now, individually, VR, amazing. Video production and watching, amazing. And then gaming, amazing. 3 distinct subjects that if you start merging into each other, somehow they lose rather than earn from each other. It's interesting.
Totally. Yeah, no, it's totally true. I actually love VR. I love VR gaming. I don't know if you've ever been to one of those, public ones where you go with your friends and you can kill zombies. I'm all over that stuff. I take it so seriously when I go and kill zombies.
Are you competitive as well?
I mean, only in the game sense of trying to kill zombies. I mean, it's not that. Beating my friends, yeah, that's fine. But I remember getting so into it sometimes that by the end of the session, I am dripping with sweat, because it's as close at the moment to killing zombies as we can get, really. So, that's interesting.
I tried one of those with my brother-in-law once. We went to a public one. I do have the Meta Quest 3 now, which is the top of the range of the low budget ones, and it's all inclusive inside, self-contained, whatever the actual terminology is, which means you can just turn it on and start using it without any kind of tracking or anything like that. And that's amazing. It does inside-out tracking. But what I've seen lately, and I've not been able to try it yet, is some zombie games where you can actually go around your house and map the walls of the property, and it has like it has awareness of what your house looks like because it picks up the space, and then you start overlaying into AR windows that weren't there in your house before, and doors that get smashed in, and zombies start joining.
Wow.
So you're walking around your house, you're just looking at your house in AR mode, in pass-through, I think they call it pass-through mode, and then suddenly things start overlaying on where the walls are, and people are attacking you in your own house. And I'm thinking, even though that's a really novel, cool thing to do, what about the people that spend too much time in that and then can't really differentiate between the reality and, you're in your house and suddenly your brain might start thinking, could I actually be attacked in this house now? Could that wall fall over and someone going in? Well, the psychology aspect, let's not delve into that. So back to the structure. Let's try and keep it together. You went through that process of the digitalization, and then you kept growing the company and getting different kind of projects. What happened during COVID time, like with your team? Obviously, going out to site in order to record, surely that's become more complicated. And then back to the video, to the production and the editing. You can do it individually in your house, but what if you need to interact with someone? What did you guys do during COVID?
We were lucky in as much as, because we do quite a lot of international work, the different markets around the world, different countries, the lockdown was happening at different times, and I can't remember, but some were locking down later, for longer, the curfews were different. And we were obviously here in London, in the UK, it was pretty, I think, how was it? We were allowed to go out to exercise, but generally, we were pretty locked down. So I was looking at what other countries were still open. And there were a lot of countries at that time in Asia. We shot in Vietnam, like Thailand, Indonesia. There was sort of like a year's period where I was doing a lot of remote directing. So that's how we got through that. I mean, it's not that it was especially lucrative. It was still pretty lean, but we were still adding to the portfolio. I was still pitching in the normal way. So not that many things changed in a production sense. We were just doing it remotely. And, COVID, obviously it was horrendous for many reasons, for many people. And, I actually lost a very close family member in that as well. So it was, bitter in that sense. But I can't say that it wasn't helpful in some ways, because it helped us reset how we did things. Because post-COVID, I actually changed how the company functions, to be honest. A little. So before,
what actually changed after COVID compared to where you were before?
Yeah, pre-COVID, I was still using the production company as a vehicle for my own directing. So it would just be me directing, 99% of the projects. But I could see that I'm limited by my own skill and talent as a director, and because there's many people who are better than me. That's the truth. And I was also limited by my portfolio. So I was interested in doing a lot of different types of genres, like cars, fashion. I remember I went through a dance phase. And the thing is, and the advice I always give directors now is, you have to try and specialize as much as possible in, honestly, one genre. You need to be known as the comedy director or the automotive director. And I had an agent at the time who gave me that advice. She said, it's really difficult for me to sell you, because it's not easy to say you are this kind of director or that kind of director. And I remember the conversation very well. And I said to her, yeah, but I'm just interested in a lot of things. So I just want to continue doing everything. She was like, okay, but I'm just telling you that there's going to be a limit on where you can go with that. And it's not that I regret doing that, because, you know, it set me on a different path. But it was clear that I was reaching a ceiling in terms of size of projects I was directing, the quality of projects I was being exposed to. So post-COVID, I decided we need to have, and this is not reinventing the wheel. Many production companies have done this, which is having a roster of directors, which sort of, they run the whole gamut of, you know, fashion, comedy. You try and talk to directors and get them on board who can fulfill these different sectors. And so the width and the bandwidth that you have to win jobs is, you know, multiplied by, you know, fivefold, because you have way more opportunities. And I take myself out of that directing position and into a more overseeing, production-led, more business savvy situation. Because, to be honest, the relationship between directing and producing and business, if I'm directing and producing and running the company, those three, that like triangle of roles, it doesn't really work, because a director is supposed to be just trying to get the best creative they can, to do the best, you know, to get the best performances wherever it is. They're not really that interested, and I don't think they should be, in the money side. It's for the producer to say, look, I know you want to do that, but we can't afford to do that. And then the director thinks of another way to approach it. For me, because I wanted to please clients as well as direct, what's happening is my directing is being compromised, because I'm just saying a yes to a lot of things just to make sure that the business survives, just to make sure that we don't go over budget. So those two, those two pillars are in constant, they're antagonistic. And it's better to split those two, in my mind, to split those two roles up.
Well, there's from the business side, there's two aspects there that people have spoken about, and they try and put terminology on them. And the one that you're talking about there is the working in the business rather than on the business, in terms of the flip between before and after COVID. Because obviously you're talented in what you do, but you need to get people that do what they do best to do what they do best as a business owner. And sometimes that means you stopping micromanaging and stepping back and allowing someone else to take that front line, because your front line is into figuring out all the other moving parts of the business as well. And that's the change that a lot of people have trouble doing, me included, by the way. Whenever we're talking about tech in our team, I find myself doing project management and at the same time sitting down with the coders to have a look at that. And sometimes going out and speaking to customers, which is great as a small business, because you're able to lubricate all the gaps that you don't have as a small company. But then when the company grows, it's hard for you to step out the way and pretty much say, you know, you're the tech guys and you're much better at building the tech than I am. And you're the salesperson, you're much better at closing deals than I am. And then you're the money person, you're better at budgeting and doing your spreadsheets than I am. And suddenly you become obsolete. But that's the goal, isn't it? When you have an engine that works on its own without you being there, then you can focus on the big picture, on the strategy, on the direction. And I guess that's what you did right after COVID. So what happened after that? How did it grow? How did it progress?
Yeah, the thing is, I want to really emphasize that I didn't give up directing smoothly, in a smooth fashion, mentally. I mean, it's not like I woke up one day and I said to myself, I'm just going to switch to producing. I'm fine with not directing. It's not like that. But I would say for the 10 years before that, you know, since I was 17, 18, just about before I went to university, I really, really loved the idea of directing. I loved the idea of that being the ultimate goal. Okay. And I'm sure you know this as a business owner yourself and someone who sets goals and is ambitious. When you set that goal for yourself, you feel like you need to fulfill it. And if you don't fulfill it, in some ways you've failed, or you're in some way lazy, or whatever negative talk we say to ourselves. So it was hard for me to let go of that directing thing. it came about again because of necessity, because people were asking me to produce more. We were being asked to do service production for I don't know if you know what service production is, but service production is where you just get asked to do the logistics and let's say the catering and just all the glue that sticks the production together. That's what you're being asked to do, usually by an international production company which is coming to shoot in your country. They need local knowledge. So that service production is its own specific skill. And during COVID, I was also being asked to do service production, although that's not what we specialize in now. It's something that we do, but it's not something we specialize in. And you're just taking care of the other production company essentially. Same way as when we go to, I've just shot in Korea. We used a great service production company there, and they just look after all the logistics on the ground there. So again, necessity being the mother of invention. Because I was being asked to produce more, I was literally directing less. So the projects I was producing were bigger than the projects I was directing. So naturally, if you have those two trains, those two tracks, the one that you're doing bigger, more, let's say, lucrative deals on, that's the train you follow. I mean, it's possible also that I could have shunned that and said, I definitely want to stick to directing. But because I understood my own limitations, I started to naturally move away from that. But it wasn't easy. Just to explain that, it wasn't so strategic as I'm potentially making out. There was, those constant questions I had every day. I was like, God, have I really failed at being a director? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's that self-talk that sometimes puts us down and stops us from making the next steps. What I found is that sometimes you just need to take the step, regardless of whether you're sure about it or not. You can only collect so much data when you're in that situation. And I have found myself, because I've got a physics and engineering background, trying to gather all the data and trying to have the right answer before I make the step. But then you're stuck in a constant loop of questioning every single thing and not actually making progress in anything. So sometimes you need to make the step, fail on it, to then realize, actually, I made the wrong choice there. Now we can go this way. So you've discovered that is the wrong way by doing it. So it is what it is. I think if any advice was to be taken out of this, is just take the step, wherever it might be, because sometimes you just remain passive. And the longer you remain passive, you become like the frog, the slowly boiling frog. You don't recognize you're boiling until it's too late. If you see it happening, take action. Simple as that. Okay, but in terms of the future, your company, where do you lead it going forward? 3 years, 5 years into the future, where would you like to be? What kind of technologies do you see coming up? What kind of opportunities and what kind of challenges do you think might come your way?
It's a tricky one, honestly. I think that let me just take it back to when I was a journalist. From year to year, things don't really change that much. You continue to use your computer to write. Although actually, I remember that when I started, I was still handwriting and then translating computer. But generally, you're doing the same thing. You have your I had a section in the magazine I was looking after. And as I grew in seniority, they might give me more responsibility, but essentially your day-to-day is the same. Production, it is really, really difficult to predict. I'd say almost every single year since I started the business has been so different, based on where the office was, who our clients were, what genres we were pushing hard in. Every year is different, and that's why it's really difficult to predict. And in some ways, I don't even want to predict, but I can tell you some of the markers that have been coming up this year, which seem to point in a certain direction. One you already have brought up, and obviously everyone is really aware of, and that's the AI side. That's been so prevalent in so many conversations this year, whether we like it or not. and we both use it. And also we try to not overuse it. We try not to have it as our main sell, but we use it in our post-production workflows. Also, we get asked, and we have been asked really recently, just to show how our AI work. And that was like 3 months ago. But I would say that you can see how much stuff is changing. I don't know if you've seen the news recently, but you're talking about the McDonald's ad. McDonald's ad. What did you mention? Oh, no, the Coca-Cola ad. Or did you mention the McDonald's ad?
I mentioned the Coca-Cola one. Is there a McDonald's one I've missed?
Yeah, there's a Christmas McDonald's one, which has just got an AI backlash. That's in the past 3 days.
Wow.
And I read an article about someone was sort of passing comment on what that could mean for the industry. And it's just one person's opinion, but they're saying, they think now that's going to put the brakes on like how quickly AI is taken up. So it's like it's so changeable now, like almost day to day. And you try to, as a production company, you try to move in step with where the changes are. But if you do that too much, you can almost not land on a specific way to go. If I changed our tack every single time a story came out, well, you can see what would have happened. I would have gone, okay, we're fully into AI. And then a few days later, I'd be like, actually, it looks like no one's into AI. So I think for us, we still try to keep to, and in the years going forward and next year, to the things that, sorry, my laptop screen just fell off the cover. 1 second. That's the technology for you. We still try to really push on the things that we know that are unchanging. So that's things like our interaction with clients and also our crew and everyone that we work with. It's a big part of our USP, I guess, which is selling this idea. Well, selling's the wrong word, because that would seem to mean that I don't mean it. I really mean it. This idea that during the whole process, and normally the process is 8 to 12 weeks, like we really, really want to make sure that people not only get the work and the results they want, but also that they don't hate the process. I held back from saying that they really enjoy the process all the way through, because I know how testing it can be. But just as long as they enjoy parts of it, but they don't come out, and I mean both clients and crew, they don't come out of let's say the 3-month process hating it. That's a big part of where we want to really put our emphasis, because I understand that people have lives away from their work when they go home, and I want them to be able to come in to their own offices and look forward to working with us. So that part is never going to change, and that part is also something we're trying to hone all the time. In all our conversations with our clients, this is what we try to impart, and I think that is impervious to technological change. Your relationships with people.
So human interaction is where essentially you not necessarily the USP, but it's where you keep the balance in between the work and the tools that you use for the work. Because interacting with people, you get the jobs in. People that are happy to interact with you want to give you more jobs, and as you grow the business, that is the fuel that runs everything else. Whether you're using AI or not using AI, whether you have a big team or a small team, loads of subcontractors working with other companies, as long as the core of it, which is the interaction and relationship with people and everyone in between, is running, then everything else just falls into place.
Totally. And I think, one of the things that's really important for us, and a place where I'm also trying to push, is the way we do pitches, the way we do pitch decks. I don't know if it's the same, that you have to do the same thing on your side of things, but creating pitch decks or presentations is such a key part of what we do. And if you look at how I was doing it 10 years ago, honestly, you'd be like, this guy has no idea what is going on. I think I was still doing Word documents, dropping images in, no design whatsoever. But even when I look back at our decks 2 or 3 years ago, and I look at what we're doing now, it looks like the way you arrange words and imagery. You can only do it so many ways, but little tweaks, little design tweaks, style tweaks, the number of words you use, the kinds of images you use. I think honestly, that bit is a source of constant improvement. I don't think I'll ever get to a point where I'll think, yeah, this is amazing, because I've thought that in the past, and then I've seen someone else's presentation and gone, wow, we're not even, we need to level up our game here. And the programs that we're using now to do that, we've started. Well, I don't even know if I should be name dropping any programs now,
podcast, isn't it?
but in the past we've used like InDesign, Slides. There's a program called Pitch. There's another one called no, we use Canva Pro at the moment, and Canva historically for us, I always thought it was very consumer facing and more lightweight, I guess. But it turns out that actually it does. Not only is it probably easier to use than a lot of programs, but it's something that everyone can pick up really easily, and also, and this is really important, the whole team can pitch into at the same time. We can work on a document at the same time, which you can do in Slides as well. But yeah, this is our current kind of favorite thing to use, but no doubt probably that's going to change in 6 months' time. That's where I can see like quite a lot of technology also infiltrating. I was using Google Slides on Friday I was putting something together quickly, and there was a button which said beautify this or something, and so you can just press it to make your blank page with a few words on it, let's say beautiful. It wasn't actually beautiful. It was very it needs work basically. Yeah. But again, like, you're seeing this movement towards one-click automation of design. Maybe it works, but it's certainly an added weapon that you can use to cut down on time, because that's a big thing as well. Like, where can we save time so that we can pitch on more jobs, so that we can not use up so many resources, so we have spare team members to go and do other things. That's a key part of that. Resourcing is a key part of how we do things now. And the other thing I'd say is what technology has helped, and in a way that actually I'm only just thinking about now, is it means that your manpower and how much energy I'm spending on like anything at the same time is less. Like, I have to use less energy to make the deck. I have to use less energy to I don't know. Actually, it's mostly just deck based. I have to use less energy to find imagery. Actually, that's the key one. So AI is being used in image research. Back in the day, it was like Google search images. Now, the AI search tools that you can use for imagery, it really, really understands what you're trying to find just from a few keywords. And you still need the human side of choice and curating things. But that part is so powerful and definitely wasn't around even 5 years ago. And these are the things that almost we take for granted as a team now. But I can see, as I talk to you now, that is where a lot of time and money is being saved. Before, you'd have to have like image researchers, someone specifically doing that job. Now I can get an intern, I can get a production assistant who honestly has just stepped in for day one, and I can say, I need an image, I need a front living room, really warm lighting, and they have to do relatively little to start producing or finding images which really fit that. So that is a key part of where technology has been really helpful. But as I said, you still need that human curation at the end.
Okay. Well, people do like to bundle AI into the word AI, and it's not even AI in the sense that we used to use it, 10 years ago. If 10 years ago someone came out and said AI, you're thinking about artificial general intelligence, so the humanoid intelligence in a digital world. But then today, AI is just the LLM in some sense, where you can chat with a chatbot. In another sense, is the generative AI that can bring up photos and images and create something that looks similar to what you've requested in a prompt. And then you've got the complete other end of the spectrum, which is what you were talking about now, the behind the scenes decision-making AI. I've seen some Google adverts recently, and they were presenting the plain old Google search that you would do. And before, you would go and say something like white background, brown couch, something, keywords. You're trying to think of what the keywords would be for the photo that you're looking for. Now you can, in a conversational way, describe what you're looking for and allow the AI to interpret it in its own search. So, and that is really powerful because it improves the ability of a human to interact with the digital realm. There is a lot of databases out there, and as a human being going through them, you need to open them up on the screen and actually read through, and you're only scratching the surface of what is an infinite pit of information, essentially. With something like AI, you can now fire out your intention and allow it to programmatically go through many options and then bring you the most relevant ones. So straight away, you interact with it a lot better. It improves your work, it reduces the time it takes to do it, and the cap of ability that the person has in order to do that work in the first place, which is great. But that's where the danger comes as well, allowing people that are not really trained or don't have the experience or the knowledge of what a good result is to have the power to essentially pass information to the project a lot faster. But that's where you come in. You can go and say, well, actually, that is problematic because, and this is really good because. That's where the human element comes in, and that's still really important.
Yeah, you're totally right. I mean, sometimes if we just use the image search idea, because that's so central to actually what we do, people, directors, or let's say production assistant will find an image that they think is good for the project, and I'll look at it and I'll say, that is actually not possible to do for our budget. It's not possible. So that's where the experience comes in, and the part that I guess you can't replace with AI, because the AI doesn't really understand what your budget can take. Only people who have done producing or production for a while will understand that size of room with that many props, that kind of styling, that's a 3-day build or whatever it is. Whereas when you do a search, it just looks like, oh, you could just do it, but actually there is way more nuance than that. So yeah, you're right. It can be dangerous because it can lead to expectations which are not managed. Like, let's say I wasn't doing the overview of that and someone just put that in the deck and said, oh, we can do this, which I've heard this a lot. Clients have said to me, we thought it was going to look like this, but it ends up looking like that. And that's a surefire way to destroy your client relationship.
Amazing. So we've gone way past the time limit for the podcast, but that's what happens when you have an interesting conversation. So in terms of closing up the podcast, do you have any final words, any distillation of your experience up to now in terms of what other businesses that might just be starting should be doing, or in terms of the technology that you've used, a highlight that you really want to bring out and say, this is what seems that happens and this is how we deal with it?
I think what you said before about sort of just making decision, taking that step, is kind of central to everything to do with, let's say, doing a business. I talk to people who want to start production companies, and trust me, that's something that I wouldn't necessarily advise, honestly. I mean, it's life which is, it's super fun. for me. But it's not. If you're looking for security, it's not secure.
Yeah.
If you're looking for if you're looking to make your dream projects all the time, well, maybe there's someone doing that. But you know, I was doing a panel talk recently, and I said, honestly, I know that, let's say on the website or Instagram, you're seeing our best work, and that's fine. And yes, it's still work that I would hang my hat and go, look, that's what we're capable of. But there's so much work which is honestly just fine that we do to make sure the business keeps going. And I guess the distillation is, it's okay to do okay work. Always strive to do the best work you can, but you need the okay work to bind the stuff together to make sure your cash flow is still good. And this sounds so boring, but to me, that's so key, that you don't become so idealistic that you turn down jobs which can take you, which can get you to the next month. And honestly, it's for us, it's a month by month to month kind of job.
Kind of industry.
Yeah. If that, you know, it can be week to week. You know, you come back to me in January, and you'll see as I sit there shaking in front of my computer, where, you know, no one says anything for the whole of January, every year, every time, and I'm like, are we going to survive? You know, it's so normal at the start of the year. But yeah, it's okay to do okay work, but because sometimes you're hamstrung by the creative itself. Sometimes it's just it might be just an interview, and you cannot bring all the bells and whistles that you want to bring. You can't have the camera. You wouldn't have the camera on a robotic arm. You're not going to have like crazy moves. You probably aren't even going to have like the very best talent. You have someone who is fulfilling the needs at that point, and you still want to try and learn as much as you can from that situation, from doing the interview in the best way, from testing different crew. There's so many different ways that you can still glean a lot of information from that and a lot of benefit from that. But as I said, it's really okay that that isn't your dream project. And sometimes I think that people, when they start production companies, they want every project that they do to be the most beautiful, to have the biggest budget. That's the other thing as well. Like, if you're expecting to constantly be moving linearly, budget wise, then you're going to be disappointed, because the spikes and the graph of how budgets move, this is my experience, maybe it's different for other people, is so vast. You know, one day you could be doing £1 million ad, and literally the next day it could be £1,000, or I don't know, £5,000. And you need to be okay with that, and not hang your success on the fact that you went from here budget wise to here, because the next £500,000 budget or whatever it is could just be around the corner. And you just need to be okay with the fact that things are constantly changing like that. But it also makes it exciting, you know.
Yeah, and that's where the boring comes in. You need to have the boring to outline the baseline before you do the really interesting things as well, that make you shine and make you excited about the whole thing. If you're only looking at the top of the line and you never do the core, then it will collapse on itself, because you will not get enough of that to support the business.
Totally. So yeah, really make decisions, make imperfect decisions, because that's all they can be anyway. Make decisions with incomplete information, because you're never going to have all the information. But when the opportunity arises, when opportunities arise, you just try and grab it with both hands, and you really try and push as hard as you can, because that's all you can do in that moment. You know, that's how we exist. So
I've been thinking through that last 5 minutes of what I should call the podcast. I always find like a quirky, clickbaity type of title to put in to attract people in. And I was thinking about the make imperfect decisions. That could be the, you know, the outline of the whole podcast. But I'll have a think as well, because that doesn't sound very clickbaity. It's a bit more self-improvement. And who knows, maybe that works better. We'll try it.
Yeah, try it. I'm sure you'll land on the perfect one.
A/B testing coming up. Thank you very much, Paul. Thank you for taking the time on a Sunday of all days to come on the podcast. We will try and do a face-to-face at some point, and you can tell us how things have changed within the next 6 months of work that you've done. It might be from the Earth to the Moon. It might be completely different, or it might be the same, and that might be a good thing. Let's see how it goes. Thank you very much,
Paul. Thank you, Roger. I've enjoyed it. Thank you.